What's up, y'all? Jax here. By now, if you've been following my work with North Caesar Entertainment, or you've known me for any significant amount of time, then you'll already know that even if it were to become a literal crime, I would not, nor will I ever miss an opportunity to talk literally anything and everything about one of my top 10 favorite series of all time. So, for my first analysis and video for Black Girls Anime, I'll be discussing the highly anticipated upcoming sequel to Inuyasha, Hanyo no Yashahime. There is a lot to discuss about the new trailer. However, because of how the internet works, no matter how many new characters we get, no matter how much we may wonder why Kagome didn't appear in the new promo art, or why Inuyasha is the only one with his back towards the camera, or no matter how hyped AF we should be over Kaoru Wada returning to score the music, we're all gonna focus on one thing and one thing only. Who fucked Sesshomaru? Like I said, if you've been keeping up with Noir's post about Hanyo no Yashahime, then you already know I've already started the process of analyzing and breaking down the mystery related to any and all possibilities for whomst the mother of Sesshomaru's half-demon daughters, Towa and Setsuna, could possibly be. So if you haven't already seen that video, head on over to North Caesar Entertainment, give us a like, and give it a watch. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to issue a major spoiler warning, as well as a content and trigger warning. Like any and every analysis and review that I've done from the perspective of someone who has intensively studied writing, psychology, and sociology, this video is fully intended to be in-depth, informative, educational, and entertaining. I will be objectively examining every piece of evidence given to us by the events of Inuyasha, as well as providing real-world historical context from famous Japanese literature and lore on why it's entirely possible that fan favorite Rin, after she's an adult, obviously could be the mother of Towa and Setsuna, while also providing evidence that supports the contrary, and how their mother could be someone else entirely, a character we've yet to be introduced to, or how it's possible for them to not even have one. I will be objectively exploring all possible outcomes, no matter how we, the fandom, may feel about them. That said, if exploring the possibility of Rin being the mother of Towa and Setsuna is a conversation that you genuinely feel uncomfortable having, especially if the content of this video will trigger you emotionally or psychologically, then listen, I completely get it, okay? I'm black, autistic, queer, and non-binary with plenty of past trauma. There's just some shit on the internet you just don't want to have to see or deal with, and when it's shoved in your face out of the clear blue, it sucks because you haven't had time to mentally prepare yourself or prepare a way to avoid it entirely. I completely respect that your feelings are valid, and fuck anyone else who will tell you otherwise or make you feel lesser for it. That said, I'm giving everyone a 15-second head start to click out of this video, switch apps, or scroll past this post because I love y'all and genuinely care about y'all's mental health and emotional well-being. So, let's hit that clock. Alright, y'all, in order to properly and objectively analyze the evidence given to us that supports Rin as the mother of Sesshomaru's children, we need to look at both the events of the manga and the anime, including the movies, but especially the filler episodes. I'm sure y'all are like, but Jax, filler episodes aren't considered canon, they don't count. Okay, yeah, sure, any other time, depending on the series, I would be willing to agree with you on this. However, speaking as a true lifelong fan of Inuyasha, it would be embarrassingly short-sighted on my part not to take into consideration the filler episodes of the first Inuyasha. If you finished the manga or the final act episodes, then you already know the character of Ayame was a filler character that didn't exist in the original manga. However, Rumiko Takahashi, the creator of Inuyasha, either loved Ayame's character so much, or at least saw the mostly positive fan reception to Ayame, that either way the result was still the same, and Ayame was written into the events of the manga. That means Ayame and her marriage to Koga is officially canon. Now, sit with that information because I'll definitely be coming back to these two very shortly, and why their relationship is probably one of the strongest pieces of evidence for why the possibility of Rin being the mother of Sesshomaru's children even exists. Meanwhile, for those who have made it this far with no clue as to what the hell I am talking about or don't understand the controversy, let me give you a bit of background. Sesshomaru, also known as Sesshomaru-sama, aka Lord Sesshomaru, aka Fluffy, aka Community Dick, is, as far as we know, the sole full demon older brother of Inuyasha. When we first meet Sesshomaru, he is cold, aloof, and 100% embittered by the fact that his father Toga, the great dog demon general of the West, gave his life on the night Inuyasha was born to protect him and his human mother, Izayoi. However, more so than that, he was furious with his father's decision to give Inuyasha the Tessaiga and was instead given the Sword of Life, Tenseiga. This leaves Sesshomaru with a deep, deep hatred and total lack of regard for both human and half-demon life. TLDR, Sesshomaru starts off as a big-ass bigot. This literally became the crux of his entire character and is equally just as important as the Koga and Ayame connection, so remember that as well. After Sesshomaru is is, ironically, nearly killed by the same sword he wants so much, his broken body is discovered by a child named Rin, who, unlike the rest of the world, isn't afraid of him. Despite Sesshomaru's protest, Rin attempts to help him while he's recovering from his injuries. And you've just got to give Rumiko Takahashi credit where it's due. The way Rin is introduced into not only the story, but into Sesshomaru's narrative is brilliant. Rin herself is deeply traumatized. She's the sole survivor of her family's massacre, of which she witnessed, rendering her mute from the shock. Not only that, but she's severely abused and neglected by the people of her village, enough to where she's horribly beaten for stealing food that was intended for Sesshomaru. So when Rin and Sesshomaru's paths finally cross, they're both physically and psychologically at their lowest points, and both harbor a deep hatred, or at least in Rin's case, a deep distrust of humans. What initially endears Rin to Sesshomaru, as well as to us as the audience, is the famous scene where he nonchalantly asks her where she got her bruises from. Rin, unable to speak, smiles at him in a way that just breaks your heart. Sometime later, Rin's village is attacked by wolves, killing everyone. Rin escapes into the forest, desperately chasing a visage of Sesshomaru, but is ultimately killed by the wolves. Sesshomaru comes across Rin's body and remembers that sad but bright smile. It's at exactly this moment in the story that Sesshomaru's deep and complex emotions towards this human awaken Tenseiga for the first time. He uses Tenseiga to bring Rin back from the dead, however, being outright unwilling to admit that his own emotions are the reason for why he's able to wield the sword's power in the first place, he nonchalantly writes it off as a test of the sword's power. Rin follows after Sesshomaru, and the next time we see her, she's not only wearing a brand new kimono and looks significantly happier and healthier, but she's also worked through her trauma enough to speak again. For the remainder of the series, Rin becomes a permanent staple in Sesshomaru's life, and she's rarely seen without him except in instances where he will leave her in the care of Jockin and Aun for her own safety. In my last video, now available to watch at North Caesar, I said, quote, Sesshomaru cared for Rin like a daughter, end quote, and even compared their situation to an Usagi drop situation, particularly now that it's up in the air that Rin could very well be the mother of Towa and Setsuna. However, after literally rereading and reanalyzing all 559 chapters of Inuyasha, including the bonus epilogue chapter, I can safely say, especially when examining their relationship through the fine lens of both basic psychology and character development, that Sesshomaru caring for Rin like a daughter couldn't have been further from the truth. In fact, it's a total misread of their entire relationship, but one that is, to be fair, intentionally written in a way that's meant to be misinterpreted. Especially, and I say again, now that the possibility of Rin being the mother of his children exists. Sesshomaru did in fact care for Rin. There's no mistaking that. And you'd have to possess literally no kind of grasp on character subtlety if you reread the manga today and still believe the opposite. I'll be the first to admit that growing up, yeah, I totally saw Sesshomaru as being Rin's foster father and growing to care for her as a father that only wants the best for his daughter. He certainly displays the signs of a caregiver, protecting Rin, nearly crying over her second death, and checking in once in a while to make sure she's doing okay emotionally and psychologically. However, to say he cared for Rin like a daughter and that his feelings for Rin are strictly paternal is, contextually speaking, wrong. Rin is usually left to her own devices and typically in the care of Jockin or Aun, so it's actually more accurate to say that Jockin himself behaves closer to a loose father figure to both Sesshomaru and Rin than Sesshomaru does towards Rin himself. However, I've also seen way too many people in the fandom say Sesshomaru is indifferent towards Rin, and that too is also wrong. The literal definition of indifferent means you genuinely have no feelings about or towards something or someone. You genuinely don't care. It's way more accurate to say that Sesshomaru is ambivalent towards Rin, meaning he's unsure of how and what he feels towards Rin, and is in fact so uncertain of what to do in regard to her following him around that his do what you want attitude openly leaves the decision to Rin herself. But since she did follow him, and knowing well that Rin didn't trust other humans, nor did Sesshomaru trust other humans to not mistreat her the way that she had been, this means Sesshomaru consciously allowed her to stay with him. Moreover, it's presented multiple times over the course of the series that Sesshomaru is, by no means, forcing Rin to stay with him. Sesshomaru often questions if Rin should stay with him, and as he and his traveling companions begin growing closer to Inuyasha and the others, wonders if she shouldn't stay with them instead, which he also realizes would be just as dangerous since they share several common enemies. That's ambivalence, not indifference. At the end of the series, it's revealed that Sesshomaru leaves Rin in the care of Kaede's village with Kagome, Inuyasha, and the others so that she can adjust to living amongst humans once more. Even Kagome voices how surprised she is that Rin didn't continue traveling with Sesshomaru and staying at his side. However, something that always struck me as odd was Rumiko Takahashi's decision to have Inuyasha verbally state that once Rin grew up, it would ultimately be Rin's decision as to whether or not she stayed in the village or returned to Sesshomaru's side. What's incredibly important to note, however, is that we see this explained in tandem with the actor of Sesshomaru having just dropped off a kimono to Rin. Historically speaking, the act of gifting a kimono to someone, especially given the time period Inuyasha takes place in, was seen as a way of courting someone. That type of open-ended information given alongside this particular scene always seemed like a very intentional creative decision to me, at least on the part of Takahashi. In my last video, I referenced and let you all listen to the non-canon audio drama clip titled Sesshomaru's Proposal or Sesshomaru's Confession. And yes, while it is a non-canon audio clip recorded by Sesshomaru's Japanese voice actor Ken Narita, the recording of Sesshomaru's feelings for Rin not only had to be approved by Takahashi herself, but she also praised it highly as well. The recording explicitly states that Sesshomaru leaving Rin in the care of Kaede's village was, yes, a way for her to readjust to living amongst humans, but also an opportunity to give her time to grow up and explore her feelings for him at her own pace, whatever they may be. Either way, Sesshomaru states he's willing to wait for her romantically and even references the kimono he gave her as a gift. And like I said at the beginning of this video, even though Sesshomaru's proposal is considered non-canon, Takahashi clearly has no problems making slight edits to the series' canosity as she sees fit. And I mean, why shouldn't she? It's literally her story. Fans against Sesshomaru and Rin ending up together will say that Takahashi would, quote, never allow Sesshomaru and Rin to be together because of their age difference, end quote. However, what those same fans likely don't know and probably don't realize in their vehement denial of the possibility of Rin and Sesshomaru getting together is that Takahashi also has no problem working around age gap differences in her characters and has done so multiple times. This brings me back to the relationship of Koga and Ayame, and yes, even Kagome and Inuyasha, and of course even Sango and Moroku. Ayame was very much a child younger than Rin when she and Koga met, and Koga, even though he may have been playing around, told her that he'd marry her once she grew up. Now, despite Koga forgetting all about this, Ayame took it seriously, pursued him, and, I say again, the two marry in the anime. Kagome and Inuyasha were separated for 3 years before they were finally reunited only after Kagome had turned 18 and graduated high school. Inuyasha, despite physically looking about 15 or 16, is canonically anywhere between 150 and 153 years old, or if you're doing the math from Kagome's side of the well, between 200 and 203 years old. Moreover, in the 3 years that they were separated, Moroku and Sango got married and had 3 children. Sango is listed as being 16 at the start of the series, making her 19 by the time Kagome returned 3 years later. However, Moroku was 18, making him 21 after the 3-year time skip. Their twin daughters appeared to be no more than 2, maybe 3 years old. And lest we forget the non-filler character of Koharu, who was 11 when Moroku asked her to bear his children 3 years prior to the events of Inuyasha. Even when they reunited when Koharu was 14, Miroku's only reason for turning down her invitation to sleep with her was not because of her age, but because he was worried that he might impregnate her and die in his battle with Naraku, leaving her a single mother. Obviously that didn't work out, and it was just meant to be, side plot fodder, but it's still relevant enough to bring it up here because Rin herself is 8 when we meet her and 11 years old when the series ends. Excluding Koharu, the common theme in all 3 of these canon relationships is that Takahashi waited until Ayame, Kagome, and Sango were of, or at least somewhere close enough to the age of 18, and even in Sango's case, that might not entirely be true, because if the kids are in fact 3, that means Sango had them when she was still 16, or more likely when she was 16 going on 17. More importantly, in 2 out of 3 of those relationships, we see the characters part for a significant amount of time, only to be reunited later to begin the true romantic aspect of their relationship. So if we're going off this information and Takahashi's past writing habits, then absolutely, there is most definitely a theme here that lends credibility to the possibility of Sesshomaru and Rin reuniting, thus making her the mother of Towa and Setsuna. We also need to take into consideration, once again, the time period that this series takes place. Marrying as young as 12, 13, or 14 was just the norm, and unfortunately, no thanks to the modern practices of child marriages, still exists in many countries. Yes, including our own, despite the legal age of consent being 18, because America is not the great country you think it is, nor was it ever. Wake up, get out there, people. It was commonly believed, and sadly still is, that a child is considered a quote-unquote adult once they got their first period and was able to become pregnant, which for many children is usually somewhere between the age of 10 or 15, or even as late as 18. Something else many fans that are firmly against the sheer possibility of Rin and Sesshomaru being a thing either don't know, or once again don't realize that Takahashi herself has an enormous hard-on for Japanese history and folklore. Over the course of the series, we see many references to famous real-life Japanese historical figures and many more in relation to famous old Japanese folktales and legends. Literally, the entire second Inuyasha movie, Castle Beyond the Looking Glass, and its main villain, Princess Kaguya, are all just one big homage to the tale of the bamboo cutter, historically considered to be one of Japan's oldest surviving manuscripts. manuscripts. Even the gaudy red outfit that Inuyasha wears is made up of the robe of the fire rat, which is something directly pulled from the tale of the bamboo cutter. Obviously, Takahashi's interpretations are very loose in regard to the original source material. But that does bring me to yet another iconic Japanese story that many fans of Inuyasha, both Japanese and non-Japanese, allege loosely inspired the characters of Sesshomaru and Rin. The Tale of Genji, written by the famous novelist Murasaki Shikibu, and historically considered to be Japan's very first novel. At first glance, it's totally understandable why so many people would strongly reject the very idea of even the most basic comparison drawn between Lord Genji and Lady Murasaki as Sesshomaru and Rin. For starters, Genji fell in love with Murasaki when she was a 10-year-old child, had her kidnapped and brought to his castle. He then raised her for the purpose of making her and the patriarchy's idea of being the quote-unquote ideal woman. Or, to put it more accurately, he groomed a 10-year-old little girl with the intention of sleeping with her. And one of the strongest points of argument against the possibility of Rin being the mother of Sesshomaru's children is that if that's revealed to be the case, then it means Sesshomaru quote-unquote groomed Rin. And it needs to be said, for the people who are claiming grooming, you are in fact using that term the wrong way, at least in regard to how I've seen it being recklessly thrown around and used in proximity to Rin and Sesshomaru. As I've said in almost every video I've ever done for North Caesar, and as you all may know by now, I approach all of my analyses from the perspective of someone who has intensively studied and continues to actively study psychology, sociology, and writing in order to make these videos more well-rounded, informed, educational, and entertaining. When there's something I'm uncertain about that pertains to any of these particular subjects, I reach out to friends of mine in those fields with more expertise than I. And when I can, I apply my own personal experiences to videos to make them more relatable, even if those personal experiences are deeply painful. That said, I can safely say, upon close inspection and through thorough examination of Sesshomaru's interactions with Rin, that while there may be some valid fan discomfort over her possibly being the mother of his children, he did not groom her. To groom someone, particularly a child or anyone of any age, is the act of gaining their trust and building a relationship with them for the sheer and sole purpose of exploiting and abusing them, whether it's sexually, financially, or both, typically overlapping when it comes to cases of human trafficking. Believe me, I know exactly what it's like to be groomed, and I know exactly what it's like to be trafficked. I have spent years coming to terms with these experiences, both inside and outside of therapy, and it's one of the many reasons why I use my knowledge of psychology and sociology to make these videos as informative as I possibly can. So, even if Takahashi herself comes out and says that she took certain elements from the Tale of Genji as the basis for Rin and Sesshomaru's relationship, those elements are at best very, very loose interpretations of the original source material, and if Rin turns out to be the mother of Towa and Setsuna, then it'll be even harder to deny that Takahashi wasn't, in some way, at least partially inspired by the Tale of Genji. Now, let's examine the evidence that supports the counter-argument for Rin not being the mother of Towa and Setsuna, explore the possibility that their mother might very well be a character we've never yet seen up until this point, and how Sesshomaru might not have even needed a partner to reproduce. Many fans of the series that are in favor of Rin being the mother of Towa and Setsuna have taken to pointing out the seemingly and quote-unquote undeniable physical resemblances and design choices that supposedly lends credibility to Rin being the mother. And I mean, when you look at some of the evidence presented, especially the artwork by artist Yibril Brownie Loco, it's pretty compelling and convincing stuff. However, any longtime fan of Rumiko Takahashi knows that it's incredibly dangerous to assume one character is related to another based off design choice alone. Takahashi is literally famous for reviving and playing around with old designs and story elements from her previous works in order to rework them into what eventually becomes her newer series. For example, what if I were to tell you that certain fans of Inuyasha have had prior knowledge of and access to how the series was going to end way back in 1983? Inuyasha is the spiritual successor to Takahashi's other time-jumping one-shot classic Fire Tripper, where, stop me if you've heard this one before folks, a modern-day schoolgirl named Suzuko is sent back in time where she falls in love with a rough and tumble but still lovable young warrior named Shukumaru. And how does Fire Tripper end? The same exact way Inuyasha did. Suzuko stays in the past and marries him. Crazy, right? We literally waited over 10 years for an ending to Inuyasha when we could have literally jumped on Google and read or watched Fire Tripper and called it a day. And the connections don't stop at Fire Tripper either. It's very obvious when you compare Inuyasha to her earlier work, Ranma 1/2, or heck, even comparing Ranma 1/2 to Maison Ikkoku or Urusei Yatsura, that Takahashi has a gift for retooling characters and plot. plots. One noticeable example of many is Sango and Ukyo from Ranma 1/2. Similar design, same personality, same big-ass weapons. Fundamentally, they're the same character, except with just a few minor tweaks here and there, and the same can be said and applied towards Towa. In Takahashi's early work, Mermaid Saga, there is not only a character named Towa, but coincidentally, that Towa is also a twin, just like our girl in Hanyo no Yashahime. By the way, y'all, the Towa in Mermaid Saga also has white hair. I am so sure that if we wait long enough, that won't be the only connection we see between Mermaid Saga and Hanyo no Yashahime, or Hanyo no Yashahime and other Rumic works. But I digress. It's easy to see in making Towa and Setsuna half demons as well as twins. This gave Rumiko Takahashi plenty of room to play around with what would ultimately be their final designs, and it seems that both twins are meant to be an odd balance of both human and demon traits, or more specifically, an odd balance of Sesshomaru's features and personality and the features and the personality of the twins' mother. Many fans have been dying to know why the twins outwardly appear to look more human than half demon. Where's the cute half demon ears like Inuyasha? Everyone is screaming. Y'all listen. It's already been confirmed and established within the series canon time and time again that not all half demons will look alike. Some look more human than others, while others turn out looking like our favorite Quasimodo like sweetheart Jinenji, even though his parents were very attractive people. What I'm saying is, it's canon that half demon genetics are a crapshoot. You never know what you're gonna get, and certain traits from the parents can easily manifest themselves differently in the offspring. For example, it's been heavily implied that the twins' red streaks in their hair are simply the generational birthmark of Sesshomaru, his mother Inukimi, and his father Toga changing appearance in relation to the twins' half-human blood. I've seen people argue that this can't possibly be the case, because how and why does a genetic birthmark suddenly decide to switch things up and move from the face into the hair, right? Well, one very strong possible theory for this is because the human forms we see Sesshomaru, Inukimi, and Toga take aren't their real forms. Their real forms are that of enormous dog demons with bodies covered in, wait for it, thick fur. And the funny thing about fur is that biologically, its organic composition of keratin and other elements makes it chemically indistinguishable from, believe it or not, hair. The difference between fur and hair are the usage of the words. Fur refers to the hair of non-human mammals, i.e. the fur of, let's say a dog, whereas hair refers to what human mammals, such as you and I have. Sesshomaru's red marks also show up in two other places, above his eyes, on his arms, and apparently his dick, if fan art is to be believed, which I deadass do. Now look at the location of where Towa's one red streak is, directly above her eye. Setsuna's red streaks also appear to curve in a similar manner to the way Sesshomaru's birthmarks curve on his arm. Interestingly enough, when Sesshomaru is in his true form, the red marks on his arm disappear completely, whereas the birthmark on his face morph completely into something different altogether. Add to those traits a healthy dose of human blood, as well as the uncertainty of half-demon genetics, and yeah, it's totally believable that Sesshomaru's generational birthmark would manifest differently in his half-human offspring. Conversationally, Takahashi did something equally similar with the character of Rin Rokudo from her series Kyodai no Rin, giving him red hair and red eyes, but otherwise an overall human appearance despite the fact he's half Shinigami. It's also entirely possible that the reason Towa and Setsuna look more human than demon is simply because it's a more convenient design choice in proximity to the overall story, so that when they and Moroha are in Kagome's time, they have a significantly easier time hiding their demonic features in that world a little easier than Inuyasha had. That, and it opens the door to the possibility that there are in fact humans and half-demons that exist in present-day Tokyo walking around completely unnoticed amongst humans. That said, fans in support of Rin being the mother have also pointed out that Towa and Rin share not only the same eye shape, but also the same hair shape, especially now that the full trailer is out and a cutaway shows Towa wearing her hair in a little stub almost similar to Rin's. It would be so easy to brush that off as just a cute and random design choice on behalf of the creator. However, if we look at Setsuna, we see her hair is styled similar to her grandfather's. But then again, Setsuna was also trained by Kohaku, and her ponytail could just be for convenience's sake, similar to how Sango ties up her hair when she's in battle. But if we look at Moroha, we see she wears a red ribbon in her hair similar to how Kagome wore one as a child, and not just only because she's trying to imitate her father's dog ears. I know y'all are probably sitting here like, I thought you said this was a counter argument that supports Rin not being the mother. It is. Like I said, just because there are a few key similarities in design choices on the part of Takahashi doesn't mean that it's necessarily relevant to them in proximity to confirming Rin as their mother. Remember how the Naruto fandom collectively lost their fucking mind when we saw Sarada wearing glasses similar to Karin and immediately assumed Sasuke was an even bigger piece of shit than we thought for having a kid with another woman and leaving Sakura to raise her, only to find out that yes, that was in fact the biological child of Sakura and Sasuke? say? Well, the same type of red herring can be applied to the counter-argument for why Rin isn't the mother of Towa and Setsuna. However, that leaves just two arguments that could potentially blow apart any argument, any faint chance of Rin being the mother of Towa and Setsuna. One of which includes not only examining the actual ages of the twins themselves, but the age of their cousin Moroha as well. All three girls are presently listed as being 14 years of age. If we use the given ages of Kagome and Rin in proximity to the end of the series, that means Kagome is 18 going on 19 and Rin is 11 going on 12, with roughly a 7-year age difference between the two. In chapter 559, the very same chapter in which the villain of Hanyo no Yashahime, Roothead, makes his debut, Kagome reflects on having been married to Inuyasha for 6 months, meaning Moroha was born sometime after the events of chapter 559. However, determining when Kagome became pregnant and how close in proximity that was to whoever the hell it was that Sesshomaru got pregnant, if he even got anyone pregnant at all, but I'll get to that, is where things get a little murky, but just stay with me here, y'all. Moroha claims she's been on her own ever since she was a child. Given what we know about Inuyasha and Kagome, it's highly unlikely that they would have abandoned their child for literally any reason. This opens up the strong possibility that the same cataclysmic event that separated Towa and Setsuna also separated Kagome and Inuyasha from Moroha, or possibly separated Kagome from Inuyasha, sending her into a completely separate dimension or timeline, and he's on a journey to find her. Hence why his back is to the camera in the promo, and why we don't see Kagome at all. However, we see Towa not only being found by Sota, who appears to be of college age, but it's also confirmed that Towa's been with Sota so long that Sota now has his own family. So we know at the very least the laws of time still seem to work similarly to the original series, where everyone ages the same regardless of if they are in Inuyasha's time or if they are in the present. We also know 10 years have passed since Sota found Towa, who at the time appears to be no more than 2 or 3. So that context clue right there tells us that at that point in time, Moroha has not only been born, but that all 3 of the demon princesses, aka Moroha, Towa, and Setsuna, are all the same age when they're separated. This would explain why Moroha has no memory of her parents in the same way that Setsuna has no memory of Towa. What we're trying to figure out though is when Kagome could have possibly gotten pregnant. That right there is one of the biggest keys to blasting apart any evidence that would support Rin being the mother. However, if we're not careful, this counter argument we're trying to prove can accidentally become one more piece of evidence that supports Rin being the mother. My first theory is that Kagome and Inuyasha waited years to have Moroha. If we examine the historical mythos that surrounds priestesses and their powers, traditionally speaking, priestesses are said to lose their powers once they get married and have sex, thus passing along any spiritual power to any children they might have, hence why priestesses typically retire once they get married. However, since we see Kagome at the end of chapter 559 actively training under Kaede to fully hone her powers, this implies that she will one day take Kaede's place as head priestess despite having married Inuyasha. So, let's say, for argument's sake, that Kagome and Inuyasha waited years to consummate their marriage for the purpose of Kagome finishing up her training, and that Kagome has been in training the entire time, right up until she gives birth to Moroha. Let's also say, hypothetically speaking, that Takahashi did in fact want to age up Rin to, let's say, 18 before she allowed Rin to be with Sesshomaru. That means, while taking into consideration the 7-year age difference between Kagome and Rin, that Kagome and Inuyasha would have had to have waited, or at least didn't produce Moroha for 7 years, making Kagome somewhere between 24 and 25 when she had Moroha, and Rin 18 going on 19 when she gives birth to Towa and Setsuna, which, referencing Sango and Moroku's relationship, Takahashi has shown she really doesn't have too much of an issue with. This leaves us with a nearly almost perfect theory that would explain not only the why behind the possibility of how Kagome and Rin could have been pregnant at the same time in order for their children to be literally the same exact age, but also the how regarding the manner of which Takahashi may have used in order to make this particular story element line up both thematically and tonally in a way that mirrors a pattern we've seen her employ in her past literary works, including the sequel we're examining today. See? This is why I said if we're not careful, this part of the counter argument could wind up playing in favor of the fan theories. But again, we're looking for counter arguments that match in both stability and validity in relation to the notion that supports Rin not being the mother of the twins, while also searching for a reasonable explanation that would see Takahashi herself not employing the same writing elements she used to create the very foundation of the series. Well, the answer might actually be a lot less complex. Simply put, Rin isn't the mother. Kagome became pregnant shortly after the events of chapter 559, and the only reason reason Moroha's birth coincides with Towa and Setsuna's is because Sesshomaru got with a human woman we have not yet met roughly around the same time as Moroha's conception. In my last video, I pointed out that if it turned out that Rin was indeed confirmed to be the mother, it would bring Sesshomaru's character arc full circle. He went from being a cold-hearted demon that wouldn't and couldn't understand why his father sacrificed his life in exchange for Izayoi and Inuyasha's to finally understanding his father's feelings, enough to the point of marrying and having children with Rin, a human. However, in that same video, I also pitched the theory that if Sesshomaru's feelings for Rin were strictly paternal and Rin wanted to be with Sesshomaru as a foster daughter, then Sesshomaru, now softened to humans thanks to Rin influences, deemed he would need a bit of help raising Rin. Enter stage right, the mysterious human woman who could have possibly mothered Towa and Setsuna. We often forget there's a reason he's called Lord Sesshomaru. Both he and Inuyasha are literally demon royalty. Much of Sesshomaru's MO for a good chunk of the series can be traced back to wanting power. It's not at all outside of the realm of possibility that Toga dying to protect Inuyasha and Izayoi probably caused some major political upset within the demon hierarchy, ultimately leaving Sesshomaru to deal with the fallout. I'm pretty sure he's a busy enough guy sorting out that nonsense, plus trying to defend his father's territory as well. But what if he genuinely made the decision to bring in a human woman, perhaps a servant, or a human princess like Izayoi was, which would explain why and how Towa and Setsuna are half demon. And Rin herself is happily helping to care for the half human, half demon children of the cold but kindly lord that saved her life. Rin is seen at the end of the manga and the anime assisting Kaede with the birth of Sango and Moroku's son, and she was probably there for the birth of their twin daughters as well. Kaede, Sango, and Kagome, after her return, probably spent a lot of time with Rin, teaching her how to be a great caregiver. It shouldn't be considered outside the realm of possibility, especially if we are trying to disprove the theory on Rin being the mother of Sesshomaru's children, to assume that Rin herself would not only be honored to help raise Sesshomaru's children, but be a strong human influence in their life as well. But if that's the angle we're going with, then that opens the door to yet another possible explanation and plot point that continues to support the counter argument of Rin not being the twins' mother, and it not only has to do with Setsuna herself, but also one other major character that plays heavily into Setsuna's own personal narrative. Setsuna is a demon slayer trained specifically by Kohaku. Hypothetically speaking, if Rin just so happened to marry Kohaku instead, then Sesshomaru would have no problem entrusting Setsuna to Rin and Kohaku's care in the event that Sesshomaru for any reason is unable to properly care for Setsuna, possibly due to being distraught and trying to find some type of way to rescue Towa. It's really a viable enough answer to the question of why Sesshomaru would even entertain the thought of entrusting Kohaku to train his daughter. That just seems like something Sesshomaru would need just a little bit of a push on, despite Kohaku being one of his past traveling companions, and one Sesshomaru knows he can already trust from how Kohaku demonstrated his ability to protect Rin in the past. That finally brings me to the final theory that supports the counter argument of Rin not being the mother of Sesshomaru's children, but I don't think y'all are gonna like it any more than the idea of Rin being the mother of Towa and Setsuna. However, I have to eliminate all possibilities of that not being true. So, what if Sesshomaru is able to reproduce asexually? Hey, I saw that. Don't roll your eyes at me. He's still a demon. We've seen examples of demons being able to reduce in some capacity asexually. Specifically, Naraku. Oh my god, but Jax, Naraku wasn't even a half demon. He was made up of other demons. That doesn't even literally make sense. First of all, we're not going to try and inject logic into a series about a time-traveling 15-year-old who travels to the past where, conveniently, almost all of the main male characters that want her just happen to be hot as hell. Kiss my ass. We're not doing that. I work with the information I am given, okay? Secondly, out of all of the demons that make up Naraku, either one or several of those demons had the ability to reproduce asexually. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for Naraku himself to have made multiple incarnations of himself. So, let's say, for argument's sake, that Sesshomaru happens to be in the class of demons that can reproduce sexually with a partner, but can also reproduce asexually if he so chooses. As we've seen, Naraku had the ability to shape his carnations into whatever likeness he so chose at will, and outside of Naraku, it appears many other demons also possess this ability. Moreover, and I hate to be repetitive, but Sesshomaru, like many demons of his stature and blood, are demonic royalty. Either way, the ability to reproduce asexually would in fact come in handy for a demon seeking an heir to succeed them if for some reason they were unable to quote-unquote have children biologically. What I'm ultimately saying is that if this is the reason Takahashi gives to explain Towa and Setsuna's existence, wouldn't it all be outside the realm of possibility nor speculation for them to be incarnations of Sesshomaru, with their physical appearance somehow representing his changed feelings towards human, of which we have Rin, Kagome, and even Sango to thank for. But what do you all think? Are you in the camp that supports Rin x Sesshomaru? Are you vehemently against it? Or if you believe the mother of Towa and Setsuna is someone else entirely, drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and follow and subscribe to Black Girls Anime, North Seas Entertainment, and follow me at Jax-Attack for even more videos like these where I give in-depth, informative, educational, and entertaining analyses and reviews of your favorite anime, manga, video games, and more.